Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation for the Aboriginal Tent Embassy Post-Referendum survey. So at the Aboriginal Tent Embassy we held a post-referendum survey to just see what people think about the referendum after it happened. So the survey was hosted on survey.aboriginal-embassy.com, which is a subdomain that the Aboriginal Tent Embassy runs, and it was conducted using Lime Survey. So a bit more about the methodology of the survey. The survey was promoted using Aboriginal Tent Embassy social media channels, so it was run completely online. The survey ran between the 15th of October and the 22nd of October. So it started the day after the referendum and ran for 1 week. Now, I'll just show on the screen here the questions that were in the survey. There were 7 questions altogether. So the first question was, who's your mob? And that was a free text field, so people could type in whatever they like. The next 3 questions were about the voting. The first question was, how did you vote in the referendum? And the options were yes, no, didn't vote, or prefer not to say, or no answer. I should point out also, all of these questions are optional. You don't have to answer any of them. The participants don't have to answer any of these questions. The next question was, what colony do you live in? So I had a drop down list of the different states in Australia, and I forgot to put Northern Territory in. I always seem to forget one of the states whenever I make a list of states. But yeah, it had a drop down of all the states in Australia except for Northern Territory. But there was a other option for that. The next question was a free text question, and it was, what were the main factors for deciding on voting the way you did? So people could write whatever they like in there. It wasn't a drop down or a checkbox thing. The next 3 questions were about future directions, about future priorities. And the next question was, what do we want? And there was a list of 20 different things that maybe people want, maybe people don't want. And the respondents can choose as little or as many of those 20 things as they like. So they can just go through and check the ones that they're interested in. Stuff like sovereignty, land rights, voice to Parliament, constitutional recognition, etc. I'll show you the options later when we get to analysing the answers, the results. The next 2 questions were about getting involved with the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, and these ones are more for these questions are more for the benefit of the embassy and deciding where the embassy is going to go from here post-referendum. Okay, so I'm going to go into the results of the survey now. The first question, who's your mob? Okay, so what I did, so this was a free text answer, so people could type in whatever they want. It wasn't a are you Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander checkbox kind of thing. People were quite very free to write whatever they like in there. So I had 235 responses for this, and I went through the whole list of all the responses and I plotted them out on this Tyndale style map. I know these maps aren't perfect, but I just wanted to give people an idea that we've survived, just to show people that we're still here and that we're not extinct. We're still here and we still remember who we are. So this map shows all the responses, the different responses that people filled in for who's your mob. And so, yeah, the coloured areas are the survey participants, and the like grey and white areas are where we didn't have any participants from. So we've got I should note here that some people answered Noongar and some people answered Palawa. So I just put them all in one colour, even though there's like subgroups in there. We also had representation from the Tiwi Islands and from the Torres Strait Islands. Okay, so summary of the results for this same question again, and some interesting things that I noticed. So there were 235 responses in total. Okay, so 235 people filled out this. 218 of them, so most of them, I think it's 93% or something, were people of the land, so Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples, basically. 218 of them, and 17 of them were either settler, or they said they're white, or they said they're Australian, or something like that, and they didn't give any indication that they were from the land. Okay, now this is something really interesting I've found. Out of these 218 people of the land who are describing their identity in their own words, none of the 218 people used any of the following terms. They didn't use the term Aboriginal, Indigenous, First Nations, or Australian. None of them used any of those terms. They all used either some kind of family name, a tribal name, or a place. No one described themselves. For example, nobody said they're Gomeroi Australian or something like that. They purely used their own terms and didn't use any of these terms like Aboriginal, Indigenous, First Nations, or Australian. I think that's really interesting because constitutional recognition is about recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as being the first Australians. But out of these 218 people who responded, none of them used any of those terms that have been imposed on us. They didn't even use the term First Nations, which is the new term that's been kind of pushed around. I think that's really interesting. Okay, back to the list of questions. So, question number 2, how did you vote in the referendum? So the options were yes, no, didn't vote, prefer not to say. Okay, so now what I did here for this graph, I filtered out mob. So I filtered out the people of the land to see what they think. And I kind of tossed out all the results, all the responses that were don't prefer not to say, or that they didn't answer it. So I just took the yeses, the nos, and the didn't votes, the explicit yes, no, didn't vote. And this is the breakdown that I got from this survey. So 57% voted yes, 34% voted no, and 9% didn't vote at all. Now this kind of surprised me because just going through from my own circles, there didn't seem to be very much enthusiasm for the voice to Parliament, but yes wins out here. This also makes me wonder, well, maybe, when Albanese was saying before that 80% of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people support the voice, 80% support it, maybe he wasn't wrong, but maybe there's more to it, which I'll show you later. There is more to it. Okay, the next question, what colony do you live in? This is the one where I forgot to put the Northern Territory in. Okay, so this graph shows the breakdown of all the states, all the colonies that people live in. So yeah, most of them, New South Wales and Queensland makes up, I don't know, like more than half of the whole responses. There was a lot from there. The next state was Victoria. You can see the graph there. There were a couple of people who put no answer, so maybe they're the Northern Territory mob. They're really not really that much. I would like to see more representation from Western Australia, actually, and from the Northern Territory, but that's probably more a reflection of the social media reach of the Aboriginal Tent Embassy than anything else, I think. Okay, next question. What were the main factors for deciding on how to vote the way you did? Now, this was a free text response. So if you vote yes, then you can write here, well, why did you vote yes? If you voted no, then you can write here why you voted no. So I was really stoked about the number of responses I got here, and I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking the time of filling this out. And just to let you know, I read them all, and I'm kind of encouraging others from the embassy to read them as well. So we got 172 responses to this. So 172 people wrote out why they voted the way that they did. So my methodology here for analysing this, I separated all the yes votes and the no votes, and then I went through and I read all the responses for the yes voters, which were 111 responses, and then I read all the no voters, which had 61 responses, people who actually filled that bit out. I read through them all, and then I made a kind of blackboard summary, kind of dot points, the main points that showed through from these reasons. In hindsight, I should have asked the question at the start of the survey, is it all right if I share some of your free text feedback? But because I didn't ask for permission for that, for sharing it, I'm not going to share it. This is why I'm doing this blackboard summary. So here's the summary. So for the yes side, okay, the yes people it was interesting. You could, I'll go through the reasons. Probably one of the main things that came through was that yes is the better of two options. There were quite a lot of people who said things like it's the best of two evils. It's the better of two options. Not really so much that they want a voice to Parliament or they think it's the best, that they think it's great or anything. It's just better than not having it. Now, there were a lot of people who were also talking about the need for positive change, and that it's an opportunity that we should grab, and it's a step in the right direction. That's the kind of gist of the responses. Some respondents said that we need a voice, and that's why they voted yes. There were quite a few responses that were voting yes on the advice of community and elders. So this is people who have gone out to their community, they've gone to their elders, they've gone and talked to their grandmas, their elders, and they've decided to vote the way they did, or they've been instructed to vote that way. And that just shows that traditional decision making, like communal decision making, is still alive and well, even though we have this democratic individualism secret ballot system that's kind of been put on us. There's still this communal decision making is still working. It's still alive and well out there. So that's kind of nice to see, I think. Another big reason that came through is that a yes vote would be a step to treaty. So these people, what they really want is a treaty, and they're voting yes for the voice because they believe that a voice will make it, easier. This is a clearer pathway to treaty for them. One other reason was not to let the racist win, because there was the Racist No campaign, and they just, I just guess, taking a contrarian position to the racism. Okay, so that was the reasons why people voted yes. Now, what I found is maybe a little bit less, maybe like a third of them didn't really seem that keen on the voice overall. There was a lot of, I kind of got this feeling of reluctance from a lot of these reasons. People voted for yes because it's the better of two options, basically. Yeah, better of two options. That was the main kind of theme that I got when I'm reading through those responses. Okay, so for the no side, okay, the main theme that came through for the reasons why people voted no was distrust. Distrust just kind of permeated all of the responses. People don't trust, whether it's like the Yes 23 campaign being funded by mining companies, whether it's because it's come from the same people who bought native title, which hasn't really been that great. The fact that it's been pushed heavily and it seems to come from government. And also a kind of distrust that the voice would even be listened to, that it would be ineffective. So distrust was like really right through it. And I've got to say also, even in some of the yes responses, there was that distrust coming through. There was really a lot of distrust in the community. Surprise, surprise. Another reason why people voted no is they think, or they believe that it's against protocol. That the voice itself is against protocol because it can't speak for all mobs, and I guess they don't. I guess that goes back to distrust. They don't trust that the voice can speak for communities. Another big reason that came through was concerns about sovereignty. I guess that comes back to distrust as well, because there's all these experts saying, "Oh, don't worry, guys, it doesn't affect sovereignty, doesn't diminish or cede sovereignty." But yeah, people just don't believe it. They're just not buying it. Another reason for no is that the voice is tokenistic. I'll just go through these quickly. Yes, another reason they voted no is because of advice from their elders and their communities. You know, they just people who lived in a community, and the community's leaders have said no, so they've voted no as well. Another reason, we don't want to be in the colonial constitution, we are sovereign people, that kind of argument. And another argument, final one here, is that self-determination should involve that people making decisions for themselves, not instead of giving advice to some parliaments who are then making decisions. That, you know, that decision making capability should be more direct and not filtered through a voice. Okay, the next question, what do we want? Okay, so in this question there were 20 check boxes, 20 different options, and the respondent can choose none of them, they can choose some of them, as many as they like, they can choose all of them if they like. So here are the options. I'll just read them out in order of the one that got checked the least to the one that got checked the most. So I'm reading left to right here on this graph. So Noel Pearson for Prime Minister, House of Representative seats, Senate seats, Voice to Parliament, the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody implemented, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples implemented, constitutional recognition, sovereign treaty, independent black parliament, state treaty, apologies and accountability, housing, reparations, land back, bringing them home report implemented, prison reform, truth-telling commission, acknowledgement of sovereignty, land rights, and national treaty. So they were the options in order of least popular to most popular. Now, the Noel Pearson for PM, the least popular option, that was a kind of like a control just to check if people are just checking all of them without reading them or not. So that's why that one's in there. Now, this graph here shows the overall responses, everybody's responses, and from least popular to most popular. Now, what's really interesting here is Voice to Parliament is ranked pretty low in the scheme of things. So it is the fourth least option out of 20. Kind of interesting, I think. Right up the top 5 are national treaty, land rights, acknowledgement of sovereignty, truth-telling commission, and prison reform. So they all were pretty high. But Voice to Parliament's actually pretty low on the list. Now, I'm going to show a couple of other interesting things about these results. What I did is I did this same graph again, but I only took people who voted yes. So people who voted yes for the Voice to Parliament, I took their responses for this question and put it out in the same graph. Now, as you can see, Voice to Parliament is now like a little bit higher than the middle version value rather than being the most unpopular value. But what's really interesting here is that it was just over 50% of people checked Voice to Parliament. That means more than 40% of people who voted yes in the referendum did not choose the Voice to Parliament if they're given a free choice of all these things. So I think that would probably say like quantitatively that 40% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander yes voters weren't super enthusiastic about the Voice to Parliament. They were probably voting for it because it's the better of two evils or because they think it's a pathway to treaty. It's not really because they are super enthusiastic about the Voice to Parliament per se. So I think that puts into perspective, back when they were doing these surveys, these Indigenous Australian surveys about the support for the Voice, and 80% of people supported it. And the conclusion that a lot of people made is that Aboriginal people overwhelmingly support the Voice to Parliament. But I think there's a bit more to it. It's not so much that they are super enthusiastic about it. Well, a lot of them aren't that enthusiastic about it. They are just saying yes because it's what's there and it's what's there on offer. And they think it might lead to a treaty or something like that. Or they think it's better than no. I don't think it means that Indigenous Australians are super enthusiastic about the Voice. That's what I'm saying. And I think this here shows it because more than 40% of people didn't even pick it as an option, okay? People want treaty, by the looks of it. People want treaty. Prison reform comes really high. And I've got to say, during the week that this survey ran, there was a youth in Western Australia in this Banksia Hill Correction Centre who passed away. A minor who was in there on remand. I'll just make this comment though. Prison reform was already like way ahead. Even before that happened, I was watching the survey as it was being... I was checking on the results every day, and prison reform was always up near the top. You know, this isn't some knee-jerk kind of reaction to this unfortunate incident in Western Australia where a 16-year-old has passed away from juvenile detention. He shouldn't have been in there. Yeah, so I'm saying prison reforms, consistent like a consistent concern, and it affects pretty much all of us. Okay, another thing. Okay, back to sorting all these checkboxes, 20 checkboxes through everybody's responses. Land rights. Okay, now I put in this checklist, I had 3 things about to do with the land. We had sovereign treaty, land back, and land rights. Now you see here, but it's a bit strange because these are all like separated. They're all separated like throughout the options. So a lot of people support land rights, half of them, a bit more than half support land back, and a bit less than half support sovereign treaty. Now I listed these options here without giving any context or explanation what these terms mean. And I kind of did this on purpose because I wanted to leave it to the interpretation of whoever's filling out this survey to decide what these things mean. And I just want to say, I think this result here is an indication that I think we as peoples need to really start a discussion about what we want, and we need to articulate that better. What do you mean by land rights? Like, everyone wants land rights. What do you mean by that? What does that look like? That's a discussion that needs to be had. Maybe in the future we can start talking about this. We can look at how land rights works in other parts of the world as examples, and then ask people, well, what about this system? Like, for example, in North America, in the United States, they have these Indian reservations, and they run casinos on there, and the casinos generate income that runs the communities. In Australia, we can't do, like, native title, you can't really do any commercial activity, so we can't run a casino. But is that an option that people would be interested in? Do you want, or do you just want straight up freehold land and just go build your houses on there? What I think there needs to be a discussion about what kind of land rights people want. I think the same kind of principle applies here for sovereignty. Yes, everyone's like pro-sovereignty. Everyone's strong sovereign people. But what does sovereignty mean? What does it look like in practice? Is there other places in the world which you can point to as kind of examples of what sovereignty would look like? Okay, another interesting thing about these 20 options is about political representation. Now, this reform was about giving Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people the right to make representations to Parliament. That's kind of ultimately what it was about. Now, in red here, I have highlighted the options that are to do directly with that theme of political representation. Now, as you can see, they are all shifted towards the lower end. It is like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people aren't particularly interested in political representation, which I think is interesting because that's kind of the whole idea of this voice to Parliament. They're more interested in treaty, land rights, stuff like that. And I think that makes sense because I think the political relationship needs to be established before you can talk about representation. You need to figure out like who we are as a people first, and then how we relate to the settler colonial state. That's the next step. And then when that relationship is defined, then that's when talk of political representation would probably become relevant then. Or, yeah, I think it's kind of cart before the horse, some of these discussions. I think putting having a voice to Parliament is a cart before the horse kind of thing, but that's just what I think. Yeah, I'm kind of interested why people don't, why the respondents here don't really see that political representation matters that much. Is it this distrust? Maybe it's about the not trusting the system. Maybe they think it's pointless because no one listens anyway. I don't know. Maybe that's follow-up questions that I can do for another survey. Okay, so the next two questions, they were, are you interested in getting involved in a renewal of the Aboriginal Tent Embassy protest to push peace, truth and justice? And if you would like to help out the Aboriginal Tent Embassy in organising sovereignty action, please let us know here by leaving a message. So these two questions were more for the embassy, embassy business, okay? So I'm going to put some of the graphs in the comments here so you can go and have a look yourself. Okay, thanks for listening, and thanks. I just want to say thanks once again for people who participated in the survey, and just so you know, I've read their responses with an open mind and an open heart. And I just want to say, no matter how you voted, yes or no, just remember we all want the same thing. Like, it's over now. It's time to move on, I guess, from the referendum. It was pretty brutal, but be kind to each other, okay? That's what I want to say, is be kind. And yeah, have a good week. And once again, thank you for filling out the survey if you did. And I'm hoping maybe we can do one kind of regularly, maybe every few months or something, to see if we can pick up any trends. Okay? Thanks. Bye.